how the government knows me. And I'm a product manager at a startup called Tech Services, which is an insurtech. And I've transitioned from engineering, software engineering, the past 7 years. So I'm seeking to perfect my agile view, key being as a product manager. So that's primarily about me. Yeah.
How's the journey so far?
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. I enjoy speaking about primarily about.
How's the journey so far?
And I don't envy stakeholder management. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's going to get interesting as it continues. I mean, this environment is quite not, I would say complex, but it is very fluid. I mean, it's quite changing. So what do you guys at MTech do?
Yes.
What did you at MTech? What products do you build?
So at MTech, we build digital access to. Yes, so we build a mobile and web-powered insurance platform, B2C focused. Customers can get quotes, compare pricing from various insurance providers in Kenya, expanding regionally, and end-to-end checkout. So you can pay, get your motor insurance, policy documents, in partnership with underwriters. So it's an intermediary or brokerage that's running as digital on a digital platform. So yeah, that's what we do. So being in insurance, what has taught me even has hardened my key and skills is what do you call it? It's behavioral. So how people view insurance and what it takes for customers to convert and be sticky. So referral program, digital marketing campaigns and content marketing. So there's so much, yeah.
Okay.
So usually that's
okay.
MTEK.
Okay, thanks. So I think it's 7 minutes past the top of the hour. I think
I don't know, maybe, yeah. Anyone else here? I think anyone else here from insurance?
Myself, I'm from insurance. I work with an insurance company, and basically we're trying to digitize some of the channels and expand the offering to different touch points. Oops, just a minute. Winnie, can you hear me properly, or is there a lag on my network?
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. So I think 7 minutes top of the hour. I think it's time that we kicked off for the sake of time, actually. So thank you, Kevin, for making time. We appreciate. So allow me to just give a high-level view of our purpose. Our purpose is to build a community of proficient Agile practitioners where we share knowledge, where we come together to help each other navigate through these waters. I won't call them murky waters, but they're very calm waters. You just need to know how to row your boat. So today, our key focus is on go-to-market. So this is a 2-part series. The first part we did 2 weeks ago. It was basically focused on the whole concept of Agile product development and what goes into from ideation to actually when a product is actually churned out or pushed to production. Today, our focus is to look at how do you go to market? How do you get your product into the hands of consumers? With me are Kwamboka Migisi, an Agile practitioner, and also Winnie Kerubo, an Agile practitioner. I'm going to give them a minute each to introduce themselves, then we can actually kick off. Let's start with you, Winnie. In the meantime, thanks for those who are joining in. We have just kicked off with the rounds of introduction. So I did introduce myself, sorry. My name is Job Otieno. I'm an Agile practitioner. I love the Agile environment. I mean, every day is a challenging day. It's a day to learn something. You never get out of a day without a nugget that's going to build your next day. So welcome all of you. So Winnie, introduction, over to you.
So my name is Winnie, has been indicated. Winnie already on LinkedIn.
Joshua, close the
been an
window.
Agile practitioner from 2018. Worked both in the banking and the telco industry, and I'm happy to be here. Hopefully, I can share knowledge of what I've learned in my experience, and somebody else can also have knowledge from that experience. Petra or Kwambuka.
Thanks, Winnie. So my name is Petra Kwamboka Migisi. I'd call myself an Agile practitioner, but more specifically an Agile enthusiast. I've been in telco predominantly. I have been in Agile since I think late 2018 as well, but in project implementation way before that. And I think today I just hope we can have a conversation. I mean, I find the conversations that we have quite rich. Let's be able to, symbiotically feed off of each other and, continuously improve basically. So cheers to having a wonderful 1 hour. I think back to you, Joe.
Thank you. So just to get us going, my question to you, I'll start with you, Kwamboka. So the last user story has been developed, tested, and merged to, for the developers like Kevin, merged to the base code, whatever it is merged to, and it is done. And the feature is out there. So it's moved to UAT, maybe you've pushed to production. So the question then becomes, is that the success for the team? Is that how they measure success, by having to close the last user story? Or because being in an agile environment, the key thing that we always talk about is value. What's the value to business and what's the value to users, consumers? So why is a go-to-market conversation important for all teams and for everyone who is planning to go into Agile, and for organizations that are actually implementing Agile? Why is the go-to-market conversation important?
Well, Joe, to be honest, we don't develop features for the sake of features, right? I mean, otherwise we are doing our own pet hobbies, isn't it? So if I'm just sitting and developing features for features, then, user stories, the end of user stories being released into production would be the end of it. But, the idea is we are all trying to drive a certain value. There's a certain customer need we're trying to address. There's a certain, there's certain value that we're trying to deliver to a customer, isn't it? And once we have our features out here, then we have to let the customers know that now this feature is available. Let's be able to get the value from it. If anything, as you're working on the product, because again in Agile, we keep working on pieces of the product. Ideally, we should be getting them out there for the customers to start experiencing value early, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So go-to-market basically is very important in taking this out there. So the question then becomes, the questions that you ask yourself in go-to-market is, who is this person that we're taking it out to? What channels are we going to use? What would be the most effective way to let the customers know that this is who we are and this is, we're out here, and what is this that we're bringing out here? So I think, in fact, the more complex work, or the more, it's very succinct, because it's not the features may be out, but the features are only as good as what they give to the customer, isn't it? So I think that go-to-market is actually the beginning of the realization of value. So at this point, then you're able to start looking at, if the promise was we're going to be able to deliver, I don't know if it's a revenue, maybe key result, or is it an intrinsic value, we're going to better the customer experience. This is the point at which you're then able to start measuring this, because it's out there with the customer. So that journey of getting your product from your own, from where you've been able to build it and you've been testing it and you're happy with it, that's it, let's take it to market. So that's very, very important, if you ask me. If anything, if you don't have that, then you built a bunch of features, but really, have you been agile about, have you gone the full length of Agile? I would argue not.
Yeah.
I would argue not.
And it takes me back to something I was reading earlier today about the top 3 questions to ask when interviewing for an Agile role in an organization. And one of the questions was put out there is, how well are your products integrated? basically talking about CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. And it's not really about just the integration bit, but how often do you deploy? You may not necessarily be putting out, let's say, releasing, let's say, depending on the product that you want to develop. I give an example. If it's an iPhone, you see, you want to be releasing an iPhone every 6 months or every 2 years. But the key question is, how do you quickly, push that change or that piece of value that you call it, like you call it the piecemeal, to the consumers? And this is to you, Winnie. So we know very well, like Kwamboka said, that within an agile setup, we don't really focus on a fully commercially viable product, but piecemeals that you can put in the hands of the customers, basically trying to drive value satisfaction. So how can then teams build that capability for MVPs or for POCs, because I know someone will say, this is just an MVP. Why do I need to have a go-to-market strategy for it? Because I know after I've taken it to the market, I will still be able, after a few months or a few weeks, I'll still have to push something else. So is it necessary, even if it's an MVP?
I think it's go-to-market strategy at any particular point of the product life cycle is critical. So when you look at the MVP, you need to reach the right people and so that you get the right feedback. So depending on the nature of the MVP, if it is as basic as a paper that you need people to test out, then you target the right people to actually test it out and see if it works well with their printers and so on and so forth, so that you can be able then to build features upon that. If you do not reach the right market, the risk to run is getting back wrong information, right? So you want to be able to build, and when people here go to market, they just believe above the line out there shining and everything. Sometimes it's being very targeted with who you're going to approach to use your product and seeing how then they respond to your product. So that journey of meeting your persona or your what do we call them, or your user role individual or your target market is really critical. So that way you're able to get actual credible information from them. See, the thing about customers is that they tell you one thing. So even when you build a prototype and take it to them, they're like, oh yeah, we'll use it. It's fantastic. But when you actually release an actual product, then you'll be able to see from downloads to purchases to in-app purchases and how they behave on your platform to know what is the next step that you're going to take the product. So it's critical at any particular point of the journey to have a go-to-market strategy and then continuously interact with that market.
Allow me to just pick your brain once more. So for teams, especially for those who are still new in the agile environment, for people who say that if I push my MVP, is basically it's a product that meets a basic user need at the basic level. So why do I need to take it to the market knowing that someone elsewhere might just, how do I put it, poach or kind of grab or pick my idea, go develop it into a fully commercially viable product, and here I am still struggling with the piecemeal that I need to push out the market. So what would you tell such a person?
Well, that really is what your risk appetite entails, because equally, if you have your MVP sitting with you, who knows about it? Where is the value in that? Where do you get the customer feedback about how your customers value your product? I think it is a risk. It is a risk in any form of it, but you can control how you go to market. You can control who tests your product. You'd find that most people who are actually first players into the team would even go to as narrow as friends and families who are your target market, and getting the people who are loyal to you, who are loyal to want you to use your services, and getting them to do that. Equally, you can actually do it in a controlled environment, get guys to actually sign NDAs so that this does not leak, bringing in somebody who's a legal expert to, whether it's copywriting or what do you call it, the other ones. There are like 3 other categories to protect your product for a certain duration until you're able to then go into the market. Then you go ahead and you incur those costs. But the risk of staying with the product, I'm a firm believer that ideas don't come to one person, they come to many people. So you stick with an idea, chances are somebody else will come up with something and hit the market much quicker.
Yeah. Just to build on
And
that,
also,
yes.
Maybe also just to add on to that, I think the risk the benefits you gain the benefit that you are going to gain from taking it out there for testing, because you're going to use a lot of resources to build onto this particular product, vis-a-vis the risk that you're taking. I think the benefits outweigh the risks, isn't it? So you have to, as Winnie is saying, if you really figure out a way to control it, it's a good challenge to have, try and figure out how to manage that. But I think the value outweighs the risk, in my opinion.
So just to build on that, on the strategy to go to market, especially for where you're doing POCs, where you're building on MVPs, feature after feature. So some of the different strategies that are quite known out there are things like maybe an alpha launch to a certain set of people, a beta launch, soft launch, and maybe later on a full commercial launch. So what are some of the strategies that teams can apply when it comes to go to market, and how do each strategy differ from organization to organization and also from product to product?
Well, to be honest, I think it's very context sensitive, if I'm to say that, because you see, with every product, just the way you're saying, there's an element of quote unquote risk that comes with you taking it out there. So maybe let's talk about what you just touched on, where you're saying, for example, you could go the way where you're testing it in bits and pieces, increasingly, widening the number of people or the scope of the persons who are doing the testing. So, for example, if you decide to do an alpha, if you're the teams who really have one who are working on some application, and for the application, we really had initially we decided to just do the testing internally and then take it out to production. Now the problem with that was any failure that we had was being felt by quite a large number of people. So then we reeled back and we thought, look, how do we cushion people from getting continual, systems are never perfect. So how do we cushion them from that? So what we went about doing it, and this was purely context sensitive, we then decided to start with, some sort of alpha launch where it was only being tested internally by users, just to be sure that all the features we set out to, all the features that we decided we wanted to have out there have been tested internally, right? This was a pretty easy one. And then after that, we go into the beta launch where we say we had a closed user group, so to speak, of the persons who are using this particular application. So this was a mixture of the public plus a bit of internal users, but this helped us to get, very non-subjective feedback, isn't it? Now, to do those launches, we really had them controlled. There was no, as Vinny was saying, there's no shiny above the line, pizzazz to them out there. It was simply communicating through various channels to be able to get to the target market. Now, after the alpha, we put it on alpha for a period of time, a week, 2 weeks, depending on what we needed to get back from here. And once we've been able to close all the gaps, because there always were gaps, then we would take this on to full production. And for that, we were able to mitigate customers getting to a place where we're going on to production, and then we've got bugs and fixes that we need to do. So I think there's value in that. But also it's context sensitive, isn't it? Because if some products are a bit straightforward, right? Let's be honest. Some products are a bit straightforward. If let's say you're doing an internal portal for a group of people who want to manage, a certain application or something like that. So, it's easier for you to just go from UAT testing to then, just after you validated the UAT test and then just go straight to production. So I think, in my opinion, it's context sensitive, but you have to work with your team to determine what are the risks involved with you going with the various options. Is it full launch? Are we going to do a soft launch with a few people, figure out what is going on there, and then now go the full launch? Or so really, it's not something that anybody can prescribe. If I'm to be honest, it's not anything anyone can prescribe, but you have as a team to talk about it and then decide. Of course, you test also, and the outcomes also help you determine how. Because like we started, Big Bang and decided to quickly reel back because we made a wrong decision, isn't it? So I think there's flexibility. That's the wonderful thing about Agile. You fail fast, you try, make a decision. It doesn't have to be perfect. Fail forward. As soon as you fail fast, and then come back and regroup, and continuously improve. I don't know, Winnie, if you have any thoughts on this as well.
I think, like I said, it's context sensitive. There are other organizations who look at the place where they opt to release whatever feature they have to a particular, what do you call it, a region or a category of customers, and see how they respond before adding another layer of customers. So depending on how you build your application or how you have marketed your particular product, if it's a physical product, so you can actually take it to specifics of the market, see how your customers respond to it, and then from there continuously ramp up to a larger scale. This all ties back to the risk appetite of the organization. That's the honest truth. The risk appetite of the organization and the customer base. Do you even have a customer base? If you don't have a customer base, so you don't have anyone to test with, you're better off going like Big Bang and trying to get people as a customer base. If you have a customer base, how can you then utilize your current customer base to give you the results you're looking for? So those are some of the things that you want to look at. It's not, you will probably just have to go through lessons learned and look at how, even from, and those are some of the things you need to know and need to start practicing early, especially when you're dealing with your infrastructure team, when you're dealing with your technical team, so that if we are deciding to go the route for which we will launch and release into a particular a segment of our customers, we need to allow for that, because that doesn't happen normally, and roll back and ask yourselves, how can we make this possible so that we're able to do this? But the key thing is not to get stuck in analysis paralysis, because that's one thing that teams always do. You find teams sticking in pilots 6 months on the line. I'm like, okay, so what's the difference with not being agile? So, you need to reach a point where you, in as much as we're going through certain steps, and this is what we have said we will work with, we need to reach the market.
Awesome. Allow me
Progress
to
over perfection.
Yeah.
So, and also, I think, as Vinny has said, the numbers also are important. In the context where you've got millions of customers, then we can start having conversations of launches and soft launches and alpha. If your target market group is about 50 people, let's be honest, just the way we're saying, the different parameters help you decide, make the decision, fail at it, and then get better at it. Make progress over perfection.
allow me to go to the audience. Kevin, being a program manager, what's your experience been?
Yeah. Sorry, you can see me? Yeah. So yeah, it's been interesting, and as Kwamboka pointed out, context is everything. I think the biggest challenge I've faced it's when you're rolling out a product, let's say that's sea facing, yeah. It's easy to experiment. It's easy to do an alpha. You do beta, soft launch. You get feedback from customers. You build a community around that. That's perfect. You can apply all those iterations and pivot. But when it's an in-house solution, let's say you're migrating from this ERP to another, from one vendor to another. Now, when applying these same principles, that do we move with a big bang, or do we progressively, go step by step? Let's say, do we do first let's say if it's a typical ERP, do we do first the sales module, mini CRM module, inventory, maybe master data management? So when do you, I think maybe based on experience, when do you decide that, okay, let's first start with the authentication and management and user management? We do that in 1 month. We see it's working well. IT can set up users, can set up roles, can set up modules. Perfect. The next month we go to inventory. Just create warehouses, do goods, etc. So you also manage stakeholders saying that it will be ready in 6 months to migrate, and the departments will get a glimpse. So that's mostly the biggest challenge, especially in internal operations, yeah, when rolling out from legacy to new systems. So maybe Job, Winnie, Kwamboka, the rest of the audience can paint a picture on how to go about that setup.
I think. Could I go first, or you want to go first?
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
So I think previously, in my experience, first of all, I think you're getting it right. Just from what you're saying, where you're saying, do we then talk about what is the first and what's the most important? Because when you're doing the workshops at the very beginning, you need to have the conversation where you're saying, okay, just like an MVP, what are the absolute fundamentals that we need to be able to just get working, right? Then the approach would be, you'd say, okay, so fine, no one can go or do anything if we don't have user roles, mapping and all that, for sure. If you can't log into the system, you can't do roles and mapping. So in order of priority, because again, it's for systems, the good thing is that it's a bit, to a large extent, it's a bit very clear what should come first, isn't it?
Yeah.
So once you've been able to do that, do it and test it. So you might not necessarily go the alpha beta way. What you do is you probably go through the module phase. Right? So you're saying the first module that we're going to work with is users and roles and everything. So you build that, test it, have everybody test it, and everybody's happy. So that's it, right? Then you layer upon it. Where so the next thing that after whatever system you're using, after this is a billing system, then the next thing that we do is X. It has to happen because beyond here, no one else can be able to do anything. So the obvious first ones, you layer them that way. Then after that, you can make more.
Just I think also to add on that, in terms of prioritization, since you'll be tasked to do so, do you go with the functional or non-functional first? So do you say we're going to start with things like audit, management and user management? That is non-functional, but the core, like billing, is core. So do you start with the functional or non-functional and go down?
I want to give you a twist to that. I'd like to give you a twist to that. I like looking at things like a user story. You need to have like a nice clean slice through the workload. One thing you will probably need to do first is map out your stakeholders, know who is the person who is actually the user, but probably they have influence. So that's the person who, first of all, you need in your pocket. And then from there, the people who probably will, if they are not informed, they will rattle you. So once you have a lot of that information laid in front of you, I would go the route of creating one line. Probably look at my segment and see who is touched, and then from there cut across like a cake slice. Like if it's audit, if it's everywhere like that, I would do that. But not focus first on being perfect and then seeing how that journey flows throughout this particular point. And then it might not necessarily mean that you're going to have everybody now come and test the platform. You can decide, like, let's say it's a branch. You can say this branch today is going to use our application, and we start rolling out with 3 people in the branch. We see how that whole journey lays out, and then keep on layering upon it, adding capacity and learning from those guys until you reach a place where now you're like, okay, the whole branch or whatever network is, this part of the network is using it. Now then we build up upon that, because the risk of sometimes when you're saying, I want to prioritize, first of all, the guys who are functional using it, and then you leave the audit team who need now probably logs in it, is that you will come and do a lot of rework. Yeah, so you need to bring them in very early. If you decide to go the modular way, you need to bring the audit team earlier into the conversation, so that when you're building an application, they can start telling you some of the needs they require, because most of them it's more reporting. You find like your information security team will require to see if we're having downtimes, uptimes, and all those things. We need to inbuild those into the system so that we don't have what I like saying, rats running in the background, where you have something very nice functionally in the front, working very beautifully, and then at the back, there's somebody who all has to wakes up in the morning to press a run report, a button on their computer. So if you can, where you can, look at the people who are impacted and try and create a clean slice, and then from there keep on scaling the capacity and adding more features. I think you have a better chance of winning.
I love that
Super
cake.
fun.
I love that cake analysis, Winnie. Petra, you're about to say something. I don't know if your train of thought is still there.
No, I'm actually of a very alternate school of thought, and I think again, I really honestly think that there's no one approach. Let's be honest. What Winnie has said makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, and you can actually marry the two. I remember when there's one particular legacy system that we were migrating, and it had, our ecosystem was crazy. So what we did, I think, as Kevin had said, what we started with was first we just did the non-functionals, where we're able to map everybody, we're able to migrate them, and people have accesses first, because the number of people that we were migrating, the sheer number was quite interesting. And then now from there, what we did was, since we had two systems working parallel, what we did was we'd move one function at a time. After we'd done all the non-functionals, and now we were sure, non-functionally speaking, everybody is able to access the system. We have all the necessary, everything is in place. Then now we started moving piecemeal. So we'd move one functionality, for example, I don't know, our sales or something. So we'd move one functionality and have it so that we were building, as we are building this, we're looking at how we're decommissioning. So we'd have them build this, test it, and as Winnie was saying, we'd have it tested by actually using it. So what we were doing is that we bring in all the audit guys, we bring in everybody. There's of course the functions that were there through and through, but we'd have a feature which we'd bring in, build it fully, have it tested. Of course, there's the normal guys, the risk, the audits, those guys were there perpetually to help us build all along. But then now we have the test, we test this particular feature. When everybody's happy, we pack it. We built to an extent where now this now system A, the new system, was to a large extent could be used to do most of the functions, right? Then we started decommissioning what we had, right? Because we were working between decommissioning the old and commissioning the new. So once we had enough products for us to actually get started, for some time we used both of them in tandem. Then the system, as they were giving us feedback, they had a fallback system. We kept sorting out, and eventually got completed. It was in production, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think it depends. My honest opinion is it depends on the approach that you take. And you see, if we were to follow her analogy, we kind of married, because at the end, at some point, we weren't just building one feature. We built several of them, and we're doing, I don't know, inventory, etc., and then we have a slice, isn't it?
So just to build on that,
and move on. So it's a marriage of both.
Yeah, just to build on that. So actually, you've actually bridged the next question I had to ask. Who do the people you collaborate with as you plan to go to market? As in, when and how do you involve them, right? How do you ensure there's a sync? The different people, there's a synchronization across. As you don't just focus on one thing. On, let's say you just don't focus, let's say, on the application, then forget the users. So my other question was, who do you collaborate and how do you collaborate? And especially where you have multiple teams, especially because in an agile setup, you have squads, you have tribes. So how do you ensure there's a sync between tribes, there's a sync between squads, there's a sync between different stakeholders? Because here there are competing interests. So how is this collaboration? Well, how do you handle that collaboration bit properly?
I would say, wallet and done. Try and mark out your stakeholders, man. Because and try and continue. Don't look at it as a one-time thing. When we're beginning, this is what we did. When you discover somebody, bring them in. The beauty of Agile, it gives you so many points at which we can inspect. Yeah, you're given so many points at which you inspect, and you're given the ability also adapt really quickly. So even case in point, what now me and Petra are talking about, if you realize this platform is not going to work the slice of cake way, but it's going to work like if you do a top layer and complete it fast, then you switch gears really quick because you have your stakeholders in the room. You need to map out if you're in a large organization, from your audit teams to your legal teams to your marketing team, if it's separate, not sitting with the development team, where if you're working with a large network of teams, try and bring in representation, because sometimes things go die at that level. So you want to bring in as many stakeholders at points where they are necessary, because if you're having a review, bring them in during the reviews and all that, so that they can have a feel of the system. When you need their advice, bring them into quick sessions as a product owner, get those questions answered by the actual users. So there are so many points of which we get to communicate with our stakeholders, and when you discover one, bring them in. So it's not prescribed how you will go about it. It's you to now maneuver and see when to bring them in and to ask those conversations. You might not necessarily bring in your marketing team, your whole gen. You might opt to bring them at the beginning when you're doing the personas and everything and things like that. And then at the end, when it's coming closer in, you tell them, hey, we're about to ramp up. Can you, now is when we need your input. And then they come in. You might find maybe you have a regulator involved, so you might want to bring even your risk team, your audit team into that particular conversation before you go to market, before you do your PVC and all those things. Yeah. So those are some of the things that you want to do. So I think the wisdom of the product owner, the coach, and even the team will tell you a lot. The team will tell you who to talk to and all those things, even in terms of cybersecurity, when to bring them in to test your platforms and all that. So they're your regular stakeholders, but those ones who you just keep informed. They're those ones who then they're good to have, but really won't really affect you.
Which brings me to the point of other than just having your key development items on the backlog as user stories, because sometimes when you look at the backlog, how it shapes up, the common thought is that just have the development features in the backlog and just track them there. But when you look at a backlog is quite wholesome. It's quite holistic, and it doesn't just look at your development items or pieces or building blocks, but everything that goes into making this product a success. So how is it important? Why is it important to have this in your backlog, and why, as a product owner, product manager, this needs to be something you need to follow up and track throughout the life of the product? Kwamboka.
Well, my opinion is I think it's very important, apart from the features themselves, which are extremely important because these are the building blocks to the actual system that you use. But I think, as Winnie was saying, if as you're including your stakeholders from the very inception, the conversations that you have, because you normally have some agreements where you're saying, look, if this is what we're trying to achieve with our product, then the possible go-to-market. I mean, even as I bet Kevin, as he's having his conversation, normally we'll be able to say, I have an idea as a product manager. This is what I want. This is how I want to take this out to market, isn't it? And all those items need to be put within the product backlog, because ideally, what is a product backlog? A product backlog is a wash list of everything that needs to bring this product to life, isn't it? And we say go-to-market is one of the linchpins of products getting out there and delivering value. So I think it's key. There's a huge mistake that we always make and imagine that it's only the technical features. I think anything that needs to be tracked, anything that we need to be transparent.
Take to mommy.
Right. Anything that we need to keep transparent, we need to put in our product backlog, so that you see also it keeps. There's this normal pitfall, and I don't know if Kevin, you may have experienced it in your world. Maybe you let us know, where you're so busy, you're very fixated on let's fix the software, let's fix the features. Then when you're ready, you remember, oh dear God, now let's start having the conversations about go to market, and then you're quickly trying to get everybody quickly, and normally what happens is that at the very end, because you're really software development is quite intense, then at the very end, because again of the pitfall that you have not put everything on the product backlog, assuming that you had it at the back of your mind, then now you're chasing it, so it is snookering you. So I think it's very valuable to have that, so that it keeps it transparent, keeps everybody honest, and reminds you. And Kevin, what your experience has been?
Before Kevin goes,
Sure.
Bernard is a Scrum Master. Are you? Can you unmute your mic? Are you able to join the conversation and maybe share some of your experiences after Kevin goes? Kevin, go. Then you can go, Bernard, after Kevin goes.
Thanks, Job. Thanks, Komboka. Yeah, precisely. Especially engineers and technical people go into analysis paralysis, and that happens a lot, especially if there's no ownership. I think also question kick back to you when you have a go-to-market strategy or setup. First thing is who's the driver, who's the owner of that go-to-market strategy, because you have marketing and sales, which is also part of go-to-market, product development, and you have quality assurance. So something like pricing, for instance, pricing may be decided by the business development team or marketing team. So it's a new product you want to check out there. It's a SAS platform. So you see, they are involved in go-to-market. You also have the engineering product, the Scrum Master in this case. You have QA engineers. So how do you who do you appoint depending on, again, context, who runs with it, and what frameworks they use? Because go-to-market, as a marketer, maybe someone who's gone through digital and content marketing school may not know agile principles and the like. So and maybe they're the driver of the solution. So what framework would you encourage them to use? There are known frameworks which can be cross-matched to the agile process, and for go-to-market, there are go-to-market frameworks, something like that.
Well, as it is right now, to be very honest, look, you see, the thing about Agile is that we don't prescribe. We're not coming to change anything, isn't it? We're not coming to change how, for example, if you're doing engineering, we just, Agile gives you, like some sort of guardrails around which you work, right? But if you are doing engineering, for example, if you're a software developer, what you do basically as a software developer is exactly the same thing, right? It's just ordered in a certain way to help you be able to realize value faster or in smaller, pieces of progression to be able to make work lighter. So even for marketing, it's the same, isn't it? So whatever frameworks they've been using in just normal traditional marketing, they maintain. Because in my context, for example, we have our marketers, right? So how it works is, for example, we've got now, depending on also your resourcing and how that looks like, things like maybe pricing and all that, you may have a commercialization, a person who's purely seated there doing commercialization, which will then look like pricing, all the digital marketing and so on and so forth. Or you may have a context where you have a commercial manager who will be in charge of performance marketing and not performance of the your key results and all that, and also be able to do for you pricing and all that. Then you have the performance marketing team who are then taking everything that you're telling them and then they come back to you with a go-to-market campaign of sorts based on whatever information you've given them. So I'd hesitate to say that there's any framework. Within Agile, there's really no framework that we follow as such. But what we do is we take your context. So if product manager, you come and say, this is a product that I want to do, and this is what I'm trying to achieve, then they take that and marry it and help it out and come up with a go-to-market campaign for you. How we execute it is within, of course, we try and make it agile in that we're saying, okay, so are we starting with the below the line, for example, then we're going to go through this. Is your persona, are they people who are, I don't know, hustlers, or are they more up market, or are we doing digital marketing, are we doing this?
Yeah.
So it's fully dependent on context. There's no prescribed framework in marketing in this context. But I think it depends from context to context. I don't know, Winnie, if you want to add on to that.
I completely agree, and the different organizations have different ways of going about it. You find the other organizations where things like pricing not done at the squad level. It's more of stakeholders who support you with doing the pricing, and that's why I'm very keen on if you're having a marketing team, if you're having a risk team, if you have the business stakeholders, the people who will be actually selling your product, if you can bring them on board and then start looking at that viability, because I've had experiences where we had a wonderful product, but financially it was not viable. And had we brought in our stakeholders earlier on and did that basic math, would have been able to know that we shouldn't waste our time here. So those are some of the things you need to look at and start asking. So if you do an MVP or if you're doing the proof of concept way, try and bring these guys in when you're having those discussions, tell them numbers, talk about the conversation, talk about how the customer was able to utilize the platform, see if it actually makes financial sense.
Bernard,
Yes. Sorry, I guess I'm the greatest beneficial of this conversation, and it's a privilege to be part of this. And Winnie, pleasure to meet you once again. I met you in African Nazarene some time back.
Hey, so many.
Pleasure to see you at this space. So just to also chip in on the conversation, I think what you said is about looping in the stakeholders within conversation, the communication between different functional teams. And one of the key, based on my experience, I think we've had a scenario where within the sprints, we have to pull in, in the reviews and all that, we have to pull in the digital and marketing team. I think that's when they come in handy on the reviews, sprint reviews, like they're able to share their views on this particular feature, this particular feature that you've built within the sprint. So having them within the conversation as you do planning, preparing for when you're doing backlog grooming, you need to see how, if you're doing a feature that deals with pricing, you need to know how can we have these guys on board. What is their contribution? What is their key role towards building this feature? So before you do your sprint planning, or as you plan for sprint planning, I think it's key to have them in the conversation. And Agile is not like closed, even within the sprints. If you're running a 2-week sprint, a 1-month sprint, within the communication has to go cut across the function or other stakeholders.
All right.
Awesome.
So I wanted to add on something you had asked about the backlog, and there's this aspect of what we call dual tracking, where you can actually, I even, the things I do on Jira, then I forget, then I have to go back and relearn how we were able to achieve it. Basically, where you have the business team running ahead of the technical team. Yes, you might have separate boards, but you are tracking both works on both ends. So you have now where we have the business team, and that can encompass your architect, can encompass if you have a technical lead, it can encompass the commercial manager, your design team, your UI team, your UX team, whatever constitutes the first element when we're trying to formulate what then the technical team will work on, and track that, so that this team is running like 2 steps ahead of you, while the technical team is more of playing catch up with what they're doing, so that by the time they rest on the work that they're working on, majority of the things we now call impediments have been removed for them. So you have a business refinement that is like a month ahead of the team, and then you have a technical refinement that is probably a sprint before the team. So you can play with those dynamics, and on the product board, on the business board, you can have things like go to market that might never land back on the technical board, right? But already, if we're having a one secure product backlog, this might just feed into the product, the business board, and this might feed into the technical board. It's important to make sure that whatever effort is required in a sprint, whether it's on business side or whether it's on the technical side, features. Similarly, if there's work that's going to be required in the business side at some point, it's important to feature it, because we always run the risk of where we're just writing technical, not really technical, but feature stories and all those, that we forget that even I as a user would like to know how to access your product, So that's for me is a simple user story. How do I then reach your product, me as a user?
Yes. So there's something I have to bridge into this conversation. Just a light one. So because it touches on or borders on communication. Because communication is quite important, and sometimes it's quite easy to keep everyone are like away, like on the periphery, like you really want to, I'll only get to you when I'll talk to you when the food is ready, right? Inviting you to eat at the table. But as you communicate, what kind of strategy can you put in place especially for internal communication? While external communication will occur, especially where you're working with agencies, but for internal communication, especially where you need to reach some of your branch staff, some of your front office staff to help you push some of the products. So how do you handle communication, and what strategies can you put in place to ensure that there's continual conversation, not only within the product development, but continual conversation across? I know everything we talk about here is all about conversation, but what kind of strategy can you have in place, especially for product owners, product managers, the tribe leads, to ensure that there's communication happening and cutting across all the way to the front office person? I don't know who wants to pick this. Yeah? Wants to pick this?
Sorry?
Yeah, to pick this?
I go fast. Okay. I've seen this along my journey, sometimes we forget the guys who are actually championing your product. And so a customer walks into your front office, regardless of whether it is a branch, whatever you decide to call it. And the guys who are front facing really don't know what's happening. And that's a very huge pitfall. So, even the authenticity of it, people are like, is this thing really real? So they are actually your first campaigners. Yeah, the people who would be able to sell your product to the customer very easily because they already know your customer base. They are able to know if this customer needs this product. Yeah, so they actually become your free and fast champions. How you can do that? You can incentivize them. You can add it to their OKRs in terms of sales. Trying to get them to get on board. You can equally just make a tool that makes their lives easier, so that it's in their best interest to want to utilize it and show the customers how to use it. So there's so many techniques, but it's important to just make sure that you do bring these guys into the conversation early enough, so that they are aware and so that they are able to, even when, look at it this way, if we're only talking about success, should there be failure of product, who is the person who actually deals with the customer? It's your front office team. It is your call center. So these guys need to be able to know, okay, now we are having a downtime. And when the customers call, they're able to shoulder that impact and tell them, don't worry, we are working on it, we're aware, we will be there with you. So you need to bring the guys in, whether it's a success or otherwise, because they're the ones who are your greatest champions.
Well, also to build on to what Winnie is saying, I think it's also very key as you are coming closer to, of course, it's the internal communication that you keep going throughout, and you sift it based on where you are with the product. So internally, I think it's very important to have a communication plan. So in one of the contexts where we were doing an internal facing system, and for us, our support system was a lot of our own internal stuff. What happened is that we found that we were here busy basing our communication plans on emails and what we thought was amazing. However, we found that it would be easier because the demographic of the people that we were dealing with at that time were quite young. So we found the easier way to do was to actually get an application out, and we had a communication application that we send out this information on a very regular, and that was so much more effective than having people using email and all that. So I think really, again, just like in Agile, as I said, in Agile most things are very context sensitive, where you need to look and figure out who exactly am I communicating to, and what is it that I'm trying to get out there to them. But then also the important element for here is also the time. Time is very key in that as you're deciding what do I need to communicate and when do I need to communicate, it is very important. As Winnie is saying, it's very, it seems very, very fishy, so to speak, for lack of a better word, that customers will be streaming in and we have no idea. The front-facing customers have got no idea what is going on. So you see, then already maybe it's a wonderful product, but you're already losing credibility by just having people not know. So I think also this for Kevin is very, very important because you provide the guide, right? You provide the guide as you're coming out to saying, look, we are done with this. So it's very important to sit down and figure out who are these that we need to communicate to, when do we need to communicate to them, and what exactly is it that we're communicating to them, right? Because a lot of times we've also had mix-ups where we'll have communication which is very light communication where you say, okay, thanks, so the feature is ready and this and that. Yet assuming that since you've been working with the product for so long, they know what you know about it. I think very kindergarten communication where it's very, very granular. This is what is happening. This is how you handle this. This is how you handle that. And again, a feedback route back, and also to keep renewing that communication. Keep renewing it. Where you have campaigns where you're going on and on about it. So maybe not. I know sometimes some companies get overzealous, but make it comfortable enough, but do it regularly, right? Like motivation, do it regularly. I think it's very valuable because you notice when you're doing campaigns, for example, you find if you send, I don't know if you're using SMSs, for example, the period around which you send SMSs, you could see even activity going up, uptake going up, and then when you don't, you see a lull. So human beings have that, anything that's at the top of their mind then tends to be something that they will keep acting on. So I think context sensitive, be clear to set up a communication plan that encompasses everybody. Look at it, keep refreshing it as you get more information.
Yeah.
Yes, we have
Petra has said that I really want to emphasize that we always forget feedback loop.
Yeah.
Most guys, when we go and we communicate and we say we are going to launch this fantastic product, and then when there is feedback coming from the ground, we are all like, okay, send it to this email address, and then we can't even be able to quantify the statistics, trying to make sure that there is a way that you're able to collect data that will then make sense. Yeah.
Okay. Let me ask, just to, because I can see we are on the hour mark. I think the best way to see is real life examples. This question to anyone. If today you are, there's a wealthy billionaire who's decided to start a ride-hailing company in Kenya, and you're now going to rival Uber, Bolt, and the like. So you're the Agilist or PM, Scrum Master, whoever, and you have to launch a product in the market. So just kindly paint the go-to-market strategy for that, vis-a-vis also M-Pesa launching the Fuliza product, how they will do it, both in internal operations and also to the customer, and also that ride-hailing app, both internal operations and also to the customer. How will you paint the go-to-market strategy holistically from C-level, board, and also now to the actual engineering and product team, and now to the customer, and then when you talked about go-to-market, and then now you're thinking agile, you want to create short iterations, pivot, iterate. Just paint a picture based on those two real-life examples.
Okay, I think we're going to stick the paper away from the M-Pesa for a second. We're not going to address that. Let's just talk about, the cab hailing example. I think if you go with one, it will work, right? So say you have a billionaire and he said, look, I have a cab hailing service that I want and I'm coming to set up, right? Good. So assuming you're a company and you've been, this is, you've been given this mandate, what I'd do first is I'd seek to, if it's from product to launch, I'm assuming we're talking about from production to launch, okay? So what I'd do first is I have my team already. I'm assuming the reason we told this is because I have some sort of team, isn't it? So we sit down and get clarity first on what is it that we're trying to achieve. And this I will get from Mr. Billionaire person, isn't it? You're the product manager, for example, I am the agile coach in this context. I would then seek to get very clearly what is this billionaire person talking about? And this will look like us sitting with him or conversing with him virtually, whichever way we converse with him, just so that we understand, one, what is his vision? So I want to be able to hail cabs or, I don't know, is it choppers or whatever. What is it? Who is it that you're trying to address? We already have Uber, we have whatever, we have whatever else. So once we are clear on this, and then also, allow me plus the team to be able to ask all the pertinent questions. So, why? What is the data behind all of this? All the questions that will come engineering, speaking in terms of software, what exactly are we trying to do? So once we're clear on what the vision is, right? We're clear the vision is I'm trying to do this, we document it, and we're clear on the vision. Then I'd move over to, okay, so we're clear on the vision, and with supporting data, because again, the truth is data driven. Everything needs to be data driven. Otherwise, to begin with, and even data sometimes will fail, but it has to be data driven. Once we're there,
if I may cut you short, let's say you've been given 6 months to go to market window. How long will you create the vision and discuss and document? What's the window to do that? How long?
So for me, it would be, I don't think it would be something that takes long, because for us to create the vision, this is us workshopping for even a day is too long, isn't it? For us to get clear on what are we talking about. And by the way, this is visioning. One day would take us, if we are clear on what we're saying, it would take us from vision all the way to us having a backlog of sorts, isn't it? Where a billionaire has come, walked us through, told us, this is the vision I'm walking through, this is what I want this to happen this way, that way, no problem. So then now we've turned around, we're clear on what we want. We turn around, we have our technical guys, they sit and say, okay, so this is the mandate, we want to be able to do this, that, and that, right? We're clear. So we're clear on who we're trying to address this for, what is it that we're trying to do, and what are we trying to achieve at the end of it all. So we're clear on that. Then with the team, I'd use whatever technique that they will decide is okay for us to be able to create a story map. What exactly the user story, what is it that we're trying to do? So we need to be able to, I mean, for whatever customer journey we have, we want to be able to log in, do this, do that, whatever, map that out, right? Once we've been able to map that out, then we'll be able to do some sort of mini MVP, but 6 months is short for you to have more than an MVP, but nonetheless, I think it is important we can make it happen, isn't it? So we'll have what we are claiming to be our MVP, which means then it is a prioritized list of everything that it will take to achieve whatever it is that we have decided vis-a-vis the details of what we have. Once we've had the MVP and all that, then now we decide as a team, because we know, I mean, the technical guys will be able to tell us we'll be able to achieve this by this time and that. And at the same time, then, of course, since we're coming into the market that is already existing, I'm already having conversations at this point because I have my stakeholders who are taking me to market, isn't it? So we're having conversations saying, how do we start creating interest in the market? Because we're clear on the vision. How do we start? What's our GTM campaign going to look like, isn't it? So they start working on that. So as we start doing the development, and then of course we're chasing down the development here, but of course you product manager are then now starting to create the noise about it. We have 6 months, remember, isn't it? So you, the product manager, is busy starting to have conversations with all the necessary people. What are the regulatory needs, what are the etc. And then we're creating noise for the as we are developing. As we are developing, also we are taking this out to a small, we'll have figured out a small user group to be testing it and see, is it working, is it not working?
Within the 6 months, yeah.
Within the 6 months, yeah. So you can decide, depending on how much time you have, you can, I don't know, because you're formulating, depending on what it is that you're trying to achieve. Try a few people, let them see it, try it. Then it could even, as we were saying, it doesn't have to be people who are completely out there. It could be your own family. It could be your colleagues. It could be something, just people who are testing it. Then as you're doing this, you're improving. You're still building your features, but you're improving. You're improving. Then you get to a place where you have your MVP, isn't it? So now you're happy with that. And at the same time, you're creating noises outside, isn't it? So once, as you're doing all of that, you're creating noise, you're creating interest. That's what I would do. Build, and of course, at 6 months, it's not going to be a fully fledged product. Let's be honest.
No.
Yeah.
And
So
that,
that's the approach I take.
yeah,
But
and actually,
I can narrow it down. The one thing that you need to do, Kevin, though, from the onset, narrow it down your scope. Know what your MVP is from the get-go. Think about Amazon. Amazon started as books only, where we can purchase books, and then you see they keep on layering it. So if you have your MVP, you know who your persona is. You can start targeting them as soon as you have something on the ground.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing that I look at this whole journey and I'm like, you might want to narrow down who your scope is so that you can truly target them and then get results from that and layer on that. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, actually, Kevin, you missed out on a conversation we had 2 weeks ago on the same thing you're asking. And actually, this is where I think Winnie and Kwamboka, we need to talk about roles, especially as a product manager, as a product owner. How deep do you go? What kind of conversations do you have? What kind of questions do you ask? Because some of these roles at the surface level, people think that as a product manager, as a product owner, you're just someone who you go talk to a CEO, C-suite somewhere. You come and tell, okay, hi guys, you need to give me this, you need to give me that. But it's not that just that. For you to build great products, you really have to go much deeper. You have to ask so many questions, be it stupid. I always say there's nothing like stupid question. You have to be very engaging. So we're almost, we're beyond 7 o'clock, and I want to close with this. So actually, I love the last conversation we've been having, and it's all about driving adoption amongst users, driving product adoption amongst users. Because depending on whether this is an existing product that you're building on top or it's a completely whole new product. We talked about disruptive product. Think Uber. So, what kind of acquisition strategies can you have in place? What kind of retention strategies can you have in place? How do you start to influence behavior? Because sometimes when it comes to customer experience, is also you have to be very clever and keen on user behavior. See how to influence those behavior, because the influence the user the how the user behaves actually influence their adoption or how fast they pick up on your product. So let's close on that.
All right, Winnie, you want to take that?
Um, it depends on the nature of the product. I'm yet to find a product that has a very good acquisition strategy and then does not want to retain the customers. They might be out there, I might be wrong, I might want to take that back, but I think we sometimes we focus so much on acquisition, then we wonder why we are churning a lot. And that is information that we also need to figure out on. Yes, we have 10,000 users, and then in half a day we have another fresh 5,000. So we are only having like 5,000 people being loyal. And in the long term, what's more valuable? Is it the acquisition? We get money upfront when you log into our platform versus do we get money when you are continuously using our platform? So those are the questions and the conversations we need to have from a business perspective. Is it one of those cases where if I come in and I bet money and I lose it, either way we have made money? Or is it that case where I would rather you come and bet continuously with us, and that way you're able to be a repeat customer? So I'm yet to see a product that doesn't want that. So most of the time we are very good at doing go-to-market acquisition, and then we have the customers. And when the customers are in the platform, we forget to go and ask them, okay, why are you leaving? Can we assist you? Trying to track where your customers went, where are they dropping off along the journey. So those are things that we also need to really ask ourselves about. How do we then keep our customers? Do we leave it at incentivization at the go-to-market once you're on the platform, or do we stagger loyalty across a certain duration so that your customer wants to say, do we want to recognize our customers who do stay longer with us? Do they get more benefits when they stay longer with us? Or is it that we are the company that just requires you to, like we know products that are in the market. There are those ones which you purchase and you have them for 4 years, 5 years. But those ones who their strategy, the money making strategy is that every year, whatever it is that you purchase from them will crash because they require you to come back. They are so affordable, but because of the affordability, you will require to buy 5 of them in the duration that somebody else would have bought one item. So all of those are the things that you need to factor in. Because like I said, I've seen it, and it's something that maybe a product owner might be able better to address this more than I am at this particular point. But we are very good at making acquisition strategies, but retention and follow-up. I'd like to hear, Job, I think this is a challenge to you. The next conversation we have, we need a product owner in the house, eh?
I think also, maybe to add on to what you're saying, really, I think that in my honest opinion, I think the linchpin lies in us getting the value right. And I'll explain myself. Acquisition is pretty easy. If you give, salespeople, right? If you give a salesperson, a target and tell them, if you get to this, I'm going to pay you this. The salesperson will bring you the number. That is the truth. If they have to murder everybody in the process to do it, they will do it. However, if you marry the acquisition, which is done very well by the salesperson, and ensuring that what you are bringing onto the table is, has the value that you are promising, integrity in saying that we have said we're going to do this and we're going to do it, then it creates stickiness. Because and I know we have to keep maintaining it. I mean, this is a utopian product that I'm talking about, but it's not really utopian because let me give an example, right? I mean, I don't know what our affiliation is, but I tend to use Apple products more. And it's not really because of, they're way more expensive, which is an inconvenience, isn't it? However, the one thing that they've gotten right is the user experience. They have really gotten it right. So even if I'm going to, to use quite an amount of money to pay for it, which I'm, by the time I'm doing this, I'm cringing and, just cussing for going to buy it. every time I look at, my experience as I'm using my product, then I'm grateful for it. And you will see me 2, 3 years down the line going for something else, isn't it? Because it created stickiness. I think we need to really think about, being very clear on the value that we're delivering and keeping honest to what we say we're going to deliver and ensuring that we're actually delivering value. Because human beings, in as much as we are saying to be peculiar, we really like to have value for like, again, even on the flip side, there are people who are Android users to the core because of maybe simplicity or really with your hand up. But the point is, you feel the reason why you're so loyal to it is because you feel you're gaining certain
Papa,
value.
no, switch on.
So I think, yeah. So if we are able to gain, to deliver the value that we promised we're going to deliver, I think we get it right. Acquisition, that's a sales thing purely.
Go to bed.
If we get value and at the same time we are getting, the acquisition, it then ends up in being quality acquisitions that we don't have to regularly, be nursing back to help. But then of course there's the retention plans, which then are also a story for another day.
I want to add on to what you're saying. Sometimes we need to strike a balance between revenue and customer satisfaction. Honestly, at the end of the day, what creates your stickiness, what makes sure your customers don't leave? Are they happy? Are they happy to use your product? Are they happy to tell somebody else about your product? Looking at things like net promoter scores, looking at things as return reduction strategies and all those things. It's important to have those from the get-go. Have a conversation. All of us here know that there is a restaurant that we go to that doesn't necessarily cook the best food, but because of the simple fact that when you walk in, somebody actually works for you. Other people, my satisfaction comes from other elements. So I think that's where I would look at it, that you also need to inbuild customer satisfaction elements and OKRs to be met.
I just shared something on the screen. I don't know if you can see it. This is a conversation we had a while. I think this was last year. I had with someone in a group. I think it was a response to a post I'd made on LinkedIn. And he actually said something that he learned the relationship shown in the snapshot some 7 years ago, that consumer behaviors are consequences of attitudes they have towards an organization. And he goes on to say, for example, this telco is not transparent with its billing and charging. I will port my number to the competitor. Power company X has more power outages than it is allowed by common sense. I will build my own solar farm. Bank Y systems is insecure. I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. And it goes on to say that attitudes directly drive consumer behaviors, and consumer behaviors affect your business results. Now, the only way to change consumer behavior for the better is to influence their attitudes by consistently offering excellent experiences. So next time somebody asks you why he or she should care about customer experience, paint this picture for them. And it goes on to, build on what, Kwamboka is trying to say. User experience. I'll invest on an Apple MacBook, an iMac, because of the kind of experience I get from it. And this again goes on to talk about, mapping out your go-to market and making sure that, everything is taken care of. It's not just about finishing the last user story. It's not about, pushing code to production, but actually delighting the user. No matter how minimal it is at the basic level, it has to speak to the user. The user has to say that, yes, you got it right. Now, then you start building on top of that. So I think that's what we've been trying to drive home. I don't know if we drove it home for the few that are here today. The good thing is that we've shared. I have a recording of the same we'll share. But as we close, I don't know, I'll give each of you maybe a minute maximum to close with something. I'll start with you, Bernard, then go to Kevin, then go to Winnie, and close with Kwamboka. So, Bernard, something to close with. Guys, I need that light.
Well, as I said earlier, I benefited a lot from the conversation, and I'm learning from it's a privilege to see you guys, Kwamboka, Winnie, Job, and Kevin on the call. And despite that we are few, but the conversation itself is priceless. So also learning from everyone's experiences and also in different sectors is really beneficial. So I really appreciate, and I've learned a lot from this conversation. And this is the thing I think I'll have to pull some. I work at Equity, just joined recently, and we have about 6 Scrum Masters. I think I'll have to pull them next time. They call.
Pull them. Tell them they've been missing out. Tell them they've been missing out. Tell them there's a forum where they can become real. They can actually build. This is what we're doing. We are learning from each other. Because sometimes we go to Google and and this is what I like about this conversation, because the experience, let's say in Atlanta, is different from the experience in Joburg, from experience in Accra, from experience in Doha. So this is real people working with real organizations, real user issues locally, and we can share some of these challenges that we have. Thanks, Bernard.
Exactly.
Tell them they're most welcome.
Thank you. I will definitely.
Kevin, a minute.
Yes, so Job. Yeah. So it's amazing, listening to life experiences and approaches from people in industry, yourself, Job, Winnie, Boka, Bernard, so Jackie has joined. So it's so nice, and especially for myself as a PM, product manager, I tend to make a lot of decisions in a day, and some of them are around go-to-market. And beyond reading a book and putting myself in a corner or blog posts or listening to some online talk, such a forum, you can actually now get a personal touch and actually internalize and meditate on such topics like GTM. So thank you very much. I'm always looking forward to diving into this. This is my second, as Job mentioned. And it's quite nice. Damana is Agile Damana. I don't know, Damana is Swahili for?
Damana is Swahili for value.
Value.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. It's brilliant community. It's very brilliant, and I love it. So keep at it, and looking forward to the next one.
You're now a Damana Agilist.
I love valuable Damana. That's awesome.
Winnie.
I always tell guys I'm a student, and that you need to continuously put yourself in a position to learn. If you're doing anything, make sure it's for the customer, and make sure it does reach the customer, because they're the ones who will teach you what they actually need at the end of the day. If that's the only thing that you take away from this, is that you need to get it to your customer so that they can be able to show you if they really value or if you're meeting a need that they actually have. Yeah. So thank you for the platform.
Thanks, Winnie. Kwamboka. Hi, Petra. Petra, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. So I think for me, all I can really say is let's always put progress over perfection. The truth is, we have continually in our context, we've been punished for getting things wrong. But in Agile, it's quite forgiving. And the truth is, there's really no prescription in Agile where it says you must do it this way. Trust yourself. Do whatever studies you need to do. Read, ask. Please feel free to ask. I'm Kwamboka Megisi on LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out. Winnie has said she's Winnie Kebubo Renge. On LinkedIn, please reach out. Job as well is there. Job Otieno, I think. So let's just reach out. Let's talk. I mean, if I'm stuck on something PM, I'll reach out to you, Kevin. Progress over perfection. And as you're doing it, you keep getting better, and continuously improving. I think that's basically what we're trying to do. Delivering value, trusting ourselves, and just getting it done.
True.
And I think we're doing okay all of us.
Thank you, Jackie, for joining, though you joined much late at the tail end of the conversation. Nonetheless, I want to thank each of you. I mean, making time 1 hour in the evening when you're supposed to be resting and just recovering for the next day. And I know how crazy an the life of an agilist can be. Your life can start as early as, I remember there's a time my life started as early as 5 in the morning, a call at 5 in the morning. It went all the way to evening, and just making time, the energy. I mean, I'm more than humbled, and I'm learning. I always have this mantra that I share with my team and everybody that I interact with. Continuous, I don't call it continuous improvement, but I call it continuous, I'm forgetting the term I used, continuous, it's all about, okay, it revolves around continuous improvement, but that value, the ability to continually improve, the continually build on a knowledge that you have. So like all we say within the Scrum framework, that continuous improvement is at the heart of Scrum. So I think even as a person, as an individual, continuous improvement is paramount, because we don't know everything, and environments are fluid and different. From like what is in the banking is different from what is in insurance. What is in insurance is different from what is in telco. There are those that are quite similar, common. But I think with such kind of platform, we get to learn a lot and we get to share. So mine is to say thank you. Thank you so much, Kevin, Bernard, and Jackie for joining. I will share the link at the end of this, mostly probably tomorrow. I'll share this link with all of you, and to allow you to just go back and listen to the conversation. If the points that you might have missed, this is live and some points might have gone through, but just go back, listen to it. Some of the points that we've been trying to put across, like analysis paralysis. I love that, because sometimes we get stuck that phase of analysis paralysis, like, okay, this happened, blah 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 blah. We go to the whiteboard, then what do we do? Blah. Guys, we need to get out of that phase. So I'm going to share that with you guys. But mine is to say thank you so much. Asanteni sana. See you again in 2 weeks. We will co-create again on the next topic to have. This was a two-part series. We did the first one 2 weeks ago. This is the second one and final one. We'll co-create on the next topic. But as we exit, Winnie and Petra, please stay behind. Kevin, wishing you a good night. Bernard, wishing you a good night. Jackie, wishing you a good night. Say a big hi to your team members. Tell them we have the Mana Forum where we learn, and they're all welcome. It is free of charge.
Thank you too.
Welcome.
Thank you. See you guys.
Asanteni sana.
Thank you. Bye bye. See you.